Hey guys, welcome back. This is going to be an episode about 3D printing a Land Raider and comparing it to the GW Land Raider. To start off here, I'm going to open a brand new GW Land Raider kit. I've always wanted one of these, and I originally was going to just 3D print one, but the opportunity presented itself through eBay to get one for a pretty good price, so I decided I would do this and then also print one using my FDM 3D printer to then compare. So firstly, let's get the GW one started. I originally was going to build these side by side, but once I started looking at the instructions and everything and getting these open, it was going to be a lot easier to build one or build the GW one following the instructions. And then the 3D printed one that I found does not really have instructions, but they had the files that I bought had some pictures to help guide you along the way. So without further ado, let's get this guy opened up and clipped off the sprues.
In this video, I'm going to be doing a lot of sped up footage. It did take quite a while to build both of these models, the GW one and the printed one. So I wanted to have the completeness of it at least, so you can kind of see what I went through to put it all together. These are complicated kits, and the GW one definitely has its own challenges, and then the 3D printed one, it was difficult. You'll see, and I'll discuss more as I go through it here. But sorry for all the sped up video. There will be commentary as we go along. As I mentioned, my original plan was to build these side by side, so you'll see that the 3D printed model is partially assembled. Again, I decided to forego that. Once I got to a certain point with both models, it just, the way the parts were going together, it didn't make sense to build them at the same rate. And then I was trying to kind of follow along with the GW instructions to then build the FDM one, but they went together. They went together very different. At least at the start, they did. For the GW model, they really start off with you building that core structure in the middle, and so you kind of work from the middle and then work your way outwards to build the Land Raider. And then with the FDM model, the suggested way from the person who created the files was to build it kind of left to right, essentially. So I did a little bit of that with both models, but you'll see once we get into the 3D printed model that it's a little different. I was impressed with the instructions. I think I've heard some stories about how bad these used to be to put together, and I was pretty happy with it. It took some trial and error, and then some pieces, it's hard to tell what effect they're going to have later on. But just follow the instructions. Again, the instructions are good from GW. They're kind of the blowout view. They're not really the step-by-step that you see with or some of the newer miniature kits. But they're easy enough to understand. It just takes a little bit of time and cleanup and all that. I will say they do a pretty good job of hiding a lot of the sprue spots on these, which is nice. But there is still a lot of cleanup that you should do, because it'll help with the parts fitting together and everything. The tracks were pretty interesting. I was a little bit concerned because there were so many pieces, how they were going to go together, or what the correct way for them to go together was. But GW does a really good job. They actually have L and R written on them, so you know which side's left, which side's right. And then each piece is numbered. So you basically just start at the front with number 1, use those little tabs and indents there to line everything up. And then you basically just go right around the body of the tank there. So they make it as easy as they possibly can. Some of the fitment of the single ones, you'll see later that they were much harder on the FDM one, but they work pretty well, or they fit pretty good on the GW model. They give you a lot more like support underneath the tread, so they fit really well and went together nicely. That front turret is a piece that you don't want to glue down right away. You want it to be able to swivel. And then I'm going to be painting in sub-assemblies anyway when I go to paint this. I do have plans to magnetize some pieces on this kit. I think I've never done it before, so we'll have to see how that goes, and I might even make a video about it, but you'll see a lot of parts that I don't necessarily attach. I just kind of let them go on there, and this big piece that goes on the top, the top plate, is one of those key pieces. I wanted to be able to get inside the tank so that I could paint the inside as much as I can, or get to. So I'm going to eventually magnetize that to the top. So you'll see that's kind of what I'm demonstrating here, having access and everything to get the fitment on there. I went with the melt-a-gun turret, and then I first had the spotlight on there, but you'll see later that I actually found a 3D printed piece that I thought looked really cool for the front. For the sponsons, I went to the hurricane bolters. These went together very specifically, so I would suggest taking your time, making sure you understand what the instructions look like and what they're telling you to do. Again, with that blown out view that the GW instructions give you, it can be kind of difficult to tell where parts go or where they attach, but you want to make sure too, because you want to be able to swivel these as well, so you don't want to put too much glue in those joints. And then here, it did take me a little bit. I ended up just using my hobby knife to make the holes in the barrels. I like drilling out my barrels. I think it adds a little bit to every model, and I figured I would do it for this one as well. And here's the hurricane bolters all finished. And then I got upgrade sprue for the Black Templar doors. And they come with a lot of purity seals and other things to make it really customizable, and then extra parts there. Here is the Land Raider all finished from GW. I really love the model. I think it's a super iconic part of a Space Marine army, and it goes together really well. It's new, super clean. I like how the door opens. You open one side and both sides go up. That's that's in the instructions on how to put that piece together. But yeah, it looks really good. So then I got started on the 3D printed model, and there's a ton of pieces. You can see that there's a lot more pieces than the GW model. And they come with their own challenges. You need to get a really good print. There's a lot of flat pieces, so I suggest using brims, because if the edges kind of flare up like that, you'll then start to have some fitment issues like I did at the start. A lot of these pieces that need to go together nice and cleanly. Some of it you can muscle together or just glue it together, but I decided I reprinted a lot of parts to this, and that helped in making sure that I had good parts. So again, as I mentioned earlier, the instructions for the 3D printed model worked from left to right, and so it connects in that left side track all the way over to then the right side track. This was a lot more finicky to get together. The GW model has more connection points in terms of pieces that help with the alignment. There's some of that with the 3D printed model, but a lot of it's free floating that you just have to really glue and then hold together to get right. So it does take a little bit of more patience to put together and waiting for some of those drying times to complete before moving on to the next part. The order of things is also important. Again, some of these pieces, just because of the way they go together, you have to do them first. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get in there to actually attach them. So these inner door pieces, that was a challenge. And then I had to double check with the outside door pieces to make sure they were going to fit and everything. Fitting these up takes kind of working in stages and again, patience. When I went to go put these two sides together is when a lot of those parts that weren't totally perfect started to rear their heads a little bit. I had to do some trimming and things, and that's where I was really happy that I did reprint some of the models that I did. There are indentations like there are in the GW models, or alignment indentations, I should say, but they do fit together really well. Like the tolerances are a little bit tighter so that you can kind of snap them in there, but you really need to hold them tightly to get them to line up really nice. I tried to use some of the plastic parts like the top door here or front door here, but it didn't really fit. It took a lot of finagling, so I ended up having to go back and just print that off. I was trying to save some prints, but it didn't work out that way. The doors on the 3D printed model did not go together nearly as well as, or as easily as the GW model. I think the tolerances could have been a little bit better, and then they kind of just flap around, but really I fixed that a little bit later where I add some glue into the hole to kind of tighten up that tolerance to make it a little less flappy. And then I once again tried to leave this top plate off, making sure that it fit at each stage, but leaving it off to paint and sub-assemblies and get inside. The tracks were definitely the first big challenge that I had. If I had read the instructions, I would have saved myself a lot of time here with printing and things like that. They do need to be mirrored. So the first time I printed these, I just printed 2 sets thinking that it would be totally fine to use on either side. But I quickly realized I got the one side done, and then I noticed that these tabs and stuff weren't lining up. So there are alignment tabs that come with the 3D printed model, but they're not as nice and as intuitive as the GW model was. And these smaller single pieces, those are really a struggle because there's really no support behind it, and they just want to fall right through. But sorry, going back to the mirroring part of it, you'll see that I get started on the other track here, but I ended up stopping because I realized that I gotta basically reprint that whole side again, which is what I did there, which you just have to mirror it, and then you can put the pieces, and then they fit. It's just a matter of how they fit with those little alignment pieces on the tracks themselves. So here I realized that the main piece that I did, I have to redo that one. So that's again another thing that I got to go back to my printer and reprint out. But I got most of the track done as much as I could, and then just kept going on from there and then when the pieces got done, I put it on. One of the things with a 3D printed model is a lot of the weapons and things, they print in 2 pieces that you have to push together. This was the bane of my existence. This is the front turret that goes on. It was just super finicky, and I don't know if it was my super glue or what. I also had to reprint these guys a couple times because you can see that they didn't line up right away. Luckily, I ended up with one good one from my original one in the orange FDM, and then one of the ones in the gray. But I don't know if it was my glue. If you guys have suggestions on super glue, I've been using this Loctite Super Gel, and it's worked really well so far for a lot of my 3D printing projects, but for some reason, this part of the model just really struggled where I almost felt like it wasn't drying fast enough, basically. But I ended up cutting out a lot of that video there, but I got it done, and it goes together nicely. There's a bottom piece that comes up through the hole, and then that goes up on top of it, which you can see here. Took a lot of fitment issues again, but by the end of it, I got it. For the sponsons on the FDM model, I went with the heavy flamers. They went together pretty easy. There is a little bit of, you got to be careful where you put the glue, because again, there's those joints that you want to be able to swivel. So you got to be careful with that. I don't think they really cover that in the instructions. Again, the instructions were more just pictures. So there's a little bit of interpretation. This part I was doing in kind of an auto storm bolter turret. I originally had it down there, but then I found this piece, and this is the same piece. I ended up printing another one of these off to put on the GW model, but it's kind of just like the tank driver port on it, and I thought it looked really cool. So I ended up having to move this one back, but because of some of those rivets and things, I had to trim off a little tab on here so that this could swivel all the way around. I ended up liking that look a lot better. I went with the same grenade launchers for the front track covers. I just think that's a cool look. That's, in my opinion, that's the iconic look of the Land Raider. So I went with that on both. Here's where I fixed the front doors. I put a spare piece of PLA that I had laying around. I put it basically in the back so that the door couldn't move around, and then that glue that I put in there actually helped tighten that up. One of the modifications I ended up having to make because I moved that storm bolter back was that bottom piece that it attaches to that it can swivel around was bumping up against the sidewall, so I had to trim that off. You probably won't have to do that unless you're doing the exact same thing here. Here you'll see that I have a different color flamer here. Going back, I realized that I needed to mirror the flamers so that I had one for each side, so I did have to go back and reprint that. So I'm now finishing up the two sponsons or the other sponson for the side and getting that all fitted up and ready to go. Last but not least, it was really just putting all the final pieces on there and getting it all ready to get put together. I ended up using blue tack for a lot of pieces just to hold it together so I can get these final shots here before I went to prime them. And here they are side by side. This is the printed model. I ended up using the plastic doors, the generic doors. I kept this model more generic. I'm not sure which army this is going to go with yet, so I always have room to add things to it later. But I wasn't going to do 2 Black Templar Raiders. But you can see the details are really nice on this, and it looks a lot like the GW one. I'm going to prime these up in a second, and I feel like they really go together well. They fit together and look like they're from the same family. The insides look almost identical. And anyone would be hard pressed to be able to tell the difference between the two once they're all primed up and painted, I bet. Here they are primed. I think the 3D printed model turned out really well. And even some of the layer lines worked with the 3D printed model because I think it made it a little bit more industrial looking, like there's some texture on the steel and everything. So it really blends in really well once you have them all primed. Here's the GW model. I did do a couple of customizations. One of the sponson covers is 3D printed. Obviously the tank driver port is 3D printed as well. There's some resin candles on there, and then I did use some of the plastic Black Templar door sprue pieces. So I want to wrap up here with doing some comparison and talking about, is this worth it? There are differences. I think the GW model obviously is a little bit more refined. It looks a little bit better. The details are a little bit clearer. But honestly, for the price, a Land Raider from GW is about $100 these days. Maybe you can get it for $90. I got mine for about $85 again on eBay. But for what you can 3D print, if you already have the 3D printer, the price was right around about $10 a filament, and that's with me having to reprint a lot of items. So I think there's definitely a good opportunity to save a lot of money doing it by 3D printing it, and I think the level of quality is much more acceptable. I know in my previous video I did detailed miniatures, but I think vehicles are really where it shines, because again, if you're okay with it, the texture that you get from the layer lines actually adds a little bit to the more like organic looking piece of metal or armor that goes on the vehicles. So I'm really happy with this. I might print more. One other thing too, obviously I did not prime these the best that I could have. I am planning on using the airbrush to paint these, and I'm going to do it in sub-assemblies like I mentioned earlier. So don't worry about that. You can get the colors, but there is one top tip that I do have. If you are going to do these, I would do it in black or gray. That way if you do miss a little bit with your primer, it makes it a little bit easier to coat or get the coats on, and then you don't have the annoying orange like I do that's underneath it. But again, once I come back with the airbrush, that'll all get covered up. Another tip is to make sure you're printing things in multiple plates. I definitely had some failures early on and I think were due to having too much on the plate, trying to fit it all in.
So doing multiple plates will help that as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Here's the last few seconds looking at the two. I got more videos coming. And let me know what you want to see. Comment down below. Is there another vehicle that I should try to FDM print and compare to the GW model? Thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe.